Today, we address the top 5 reasons why financial advisor valuations are up 13.7% during the pandemic. USA Financial affiliated advisors' 12-month Blue Book valuations increased over the last 12 months. Let's talk about how.
This is The Rare Advisor, proud to be a part of the Advisor Advancement Network and home of a business model supercharged by recurring and repeatable events. Your host is Mike Walters, CEO of USA Financial. He is an investment advisor representative of and securities are offered through USA Financial Securities, member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor.
Hey, welcome back to The Rare Advisor. Can I ask you a quick favor? If you've been watching these on a regular basis, if you've been listening to these on the podcast, please give me a like, give me a subscribe. It's super helpful for us in tracking all the different statistics on what goes on here and making sure that we're making a difference and we're putting out the kind of content that you're interested in. All right. Hey, with that said, today we're going to talk about the top 5 reasons why financial advisor valuations are actually up 13.7% during the pandemic for advisors who are affiliated here with USA Financial. So you see what happens is we actually track all of the business that lands on the various platforms here at USA Financial, correlate that back to the practices where it originates, and automatically on a quarterly basis calculate a Blue Book valuation on those practices, on those blocks of business. It's a service that we've added that we just kind of do automatically on a quarterly basis for every advisor affiliated with us. And it's really provided us a telling tale, especially as we've gone through this historic period of time known as the pandemic. So over that period, we've been watching those numbers. And as you can imagine, there's some ebb and flow going on during the pandemic, especially as it relates to transactional revenue, commissionable revenue, things that generally occur at the front end of a new conversation, at the front end of a new relationship with a prospect becoming a client. Generally speaking, if you've got transactional business to take place, it generally happens at the front end of those relationships. Not that it can't happen, midstream or later in the relationship, but just generally speaking, that's where it happens. So when things like a pandemic are affecting our ability to physically get in front of clientele, we're seeing that being affected or affecting, I should say, the transactional revenues. And then that piece of the component in the valuation would get affected accordingly. Now, the flip side of that, however, is also true. When we're looking at recurring revenue, when we're looking at assets under management, for the most part, that revenue has continued to chug along during the pandemic. Unless a client physically picked up and left you, even if you weren't bringing new clients in, you at least still had that ongoing recurring revenue event that was taking place based on that block of business, based on that mountain of assets that you've been collecting and adding to over the years in terms of the management that you do on behalf of your clients with your practice. Many advisors, especially those who have gone through some of our programs, actually increased both their transactional revenue and especially their recurring revenue during that period of time. So again, USA Financial affiliated advisors over the 12-month, looking at a 12-month Blue Book value ending 2021 June 30. So June 30th of 2021, comparing that to the 12 months prior, are up 13.7% for the valuations compared to 6/30 of 2020. So again, 6/30/2020 to 6/30/2021, 13.7% increase. What's the top 5 reasons for that? Number 1, those advisors have concentrated on electronic, digital, and video communication. They converted their practices over. Most practices, most large successful practices have relied on face-to-face, one-on-one appointment process. You might have done group meetings, group events, client socials, all these other things. But when it came down to it, in terms of transacting business, generally speaking, the clients were in your office. So these advisors have concentrated and converted to take advantage of electronic, digital, and video communications. Now, the one thing that we know was a huge positive during the pandemic from a business perspective is that our older clientele had to become comfortable with things like Zoom and video calls. Because if they wanted to stay in touch with the family, that's how they had to do it. So if they want to talk to the grandkids, they had to learn this stuff. So there was a learning curve that probably would have taken 10, 15, 20 years under normal circumstances. It took place in somewhere between 12 to 18 months. Huge advantage, because now you can continue this in a post-pandemic environment, continue using that valuable tool, whether it's to communicate with your snowbirds when they're down south in the winter, or whether it is to unshackle the geographic boundaries of your practice and be able to work with people far beyond the circumference of being able to drive into your office. And there's many other things we can think of in that particular item of the 5 top reasons. Number 2, converting to online client events and remote meetings. So now suddenly, if you were running large public events, if you're running client appreciation events, the fact that you started running meetings, not just one-on-one face-to-face stuff like I was talking about a moment ago, but you're actually running events online, became a huge, huge juggernaut during the pandemic. There are great ways to do fun things in an online environment. And you could literally run the equivalent of a client seminar or a client appreciation event online. And the best advisors were converting and doing that. So first, they had to get themselves set up electronically, digitally, and from a video communication standpoint, so they could handle the one-on-one stuff. Now we're introducing the group stuff. Okay. Number 3, the introducing of a program to duplicate the top 10 to 20% of your clientele. We call it the introduction program. Referrals are tough. Referrals are uncomfortable. Referrals are difficult. Referrals make you look like you're standing there with your hat in your hand, asking for help. That's not what an introduction is. An introduction comes from a maven, from someone who knows that because they love this person, this friend, this family member, that they are creating value by bringing them to you. So simply put, if they're important to my client, they're important to me. Introductions are essentially a benefit. They're a benefit or an enhancement to my existing clientele. The fact that we're willing to do this because you're our client changes the thought process of an introduction. Now, there's a whole elaborate way to go about this. Here at USA Financial, we have our protocol group. That's our coaching, consulting, and mentoring group. They have created just a system that is out of this world that will help you know how to properly get introductions. So if you haven't seen the video that I did prior to this, where I talked about getting to critical mass through physical events like live events, but then once you're there, you could start duplicating your top 10, 20%. This is what I'm talking about. There's ways to do it digitally as well. And then also, now as we're slowly seeing things change, and it really depends on where you live and what the mask mandates are and what lockdowns are taking place at any point in time based upon your physical location, but starting to re-engage with live events when it's possible and when it's wise. The live event numerics are coming in really strong. We have situations, one gentleman, John Jones on my team, said the other day, it's a first class problem, meaning the fact that they're hitting room capacities, that they're going past the seating ability of some of these live events because people have this pent up demand to get out and find that new advisor to come to your events. It's a first class problem. It's a problem nonetheless. So what happens is you get like 2-for-1 meetings. A lot of times you can literally populate 2 events with the marketing efforts of what used to be just 1 event. The other thing that I'll tell you is that I believe, from what I'm hearing from a lot of advisors from around the country, is that those people who are physically coming, they tend to be more serious. So the appointments that are coming out of those events have a very high closing ratios because people are truly looking for new advisors. They probably weren't happy with their existing advisor relationship during the pandemic. They didn't have any good way to get out and find a new advisor, however, during the pandemic. So now as things are loosening up, they're attending live events and they're making that change. And then finally, to point out the obvious, embrace recurring revenue. Embrace assets under management, especially those that are using modeling. You want to have modeling to get the scale that you need in your practice, to get the economies of scale, to get the streamlining effect for your back office, so that you can use different models and different allocations and literally kind of have almost a custom approach based upon an individual, but using these models, not using individual transactions where I have to physically manage everybody on an individual basis. That's really, really old school, and it'll kill you administratively. But if you're using things like USA Financial Exchange, that's the TAMP program that we created years ago, you get not only all these professional asset managers and all their models at your fingertips, but if you are executing something on your behalf, you're doing rep as asset manager or rep as PM, portfolio manager, then you can get the horsepower, the tools that a full-blown asset manager would have. Will hand over those keys to that kingdom to you, train you how to use that, and you can actually execute some of your own models as well. So there you have it. That's the 5 items that really helped increase advisor valuations 13.7% over a 12-month period during the pandemic, from 6/30 of 2020 to 6/30 of 2021. Get yourself converted electronically, digitally, video-wise. Talking too fast. Number 2, convert over to those online events and those online remote meetings. Number 3, create an introduction program to duplicate your top clientele. Number 4, re-engage with live events when it's possible and when it's wise to physically get back in front of people. And then number 5, embrace your recurring revenue opportunities. Use assets under management to your benefit and the benefit of your client. Hey, thanks. And again, please subscribe. Give me a like. Really appreciate it. Thank you.